All right, everyone. Thanks so much for attending today's webinar. Let's get started. All right, so Brandon is an award-winning certified grounds manager who believes that producing flawless properties does not mean sacrificing in our role as environmental stewards. He has a BS in turf grass and an MBA in business, as well as many industry certifications. This gives him a unique perspective on managing sites. He's a two-time winner of a grand award in the PGMS Green Star competition. He's also an author and speaks on ground maintenance topics. You can check out his blog at www.sustainablegrounds.net. Brandon, thanks so much for coming to today's webinar. Really appreciate having you on.
Oh, thank you very much for having me today.
And guys, just an introduction to your Holganix host here. My name's Katie. I'm on the right-hand side. And on the left is Dr. Bob, our Director of Plant and Soil Science.
Hi, everybody. Glad to have you on board.
So just some semantics before we get started. If you guys have any questions, type them in the chat box. It's labeled questions on your control panel. We've got you all on mute right now because as we have more and more attendees, it gets a little bit difficult to have you all speaking up. So chat, put any questions you have in your chat box, and we'll get to it at the end of the webinar. The agenda is going to look like this. We're going to give you 10 minutes about Holganix and Holganix Bloom in specific. Then we're going to dive into Brandon Haley's interview, followed up by some audience Q&A sessions. Throughout the presentation, we're going to have some audience polls so we can get some interaction that way. So this is the first audience poll question. Let me launch it for you. Are you currently using Holganix? All right, looks like we got 100% vote. That's pretty good. So let's share the results so we can all see who's on. So 75% of you are actually distributors or Holganix partners, and 25% of you are currently using Holganix. So just for those of you who maybe you're a distributor from Ewing and you're a little new from in the Holganix realm, but Holganix is a 100% organic plant probiotic that balances the soil's ecosystem, building strong roots and growing healthier, more resilient plants.
So just to give you an idea about how what Holganix is, it's actually a concentrated compost tea, and it's teeming with living organisms. I just did an analysis recently on one of our products for a bacterial analysis, and there were over 800 species of bacteria in the product. It's dominated by two genera, Lactobacillus and Bacillus. And in those groups of bacteria are many species that have noted plant growth regulating effect. They produce auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, many amino acids, and they interact very closely with the plants. They also produce, in many cases, antibiotics. So they function in disease control also. In addition to the bacteria, the next most numerous organisms are fungi, and there's trichoderma fungus in there, which also contributes to disease control, and there are mycorrhizae, which many of you know are essential organisms for good root health, and they assist in fertility of the roots, especially making phosphorus available to plants.
So all that kind of leads to a balanced soil food web, right, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, the soil food web is a concept that was introduced by Elaine Ingram, who is the kind of like the godmother of the whole compost tea concept. And this diagram is just to show you how all these organisms interact with one another. So it all starts with organic matter, which comes from the plant and animal life that live in the soil. And then you have the bacteria, fungi at the cellular level interacting with the plant roots. Also at a cellular level, you have protozoa, which are single cell animals. Um, and interestingly enough, I discovered in this bacterial study I was telling you about that we have a class of bacteria in the analysis that only live inside the cell of a protozoa. In that bacteria study, we have proof that protozoa are there because these bacteria are abundant. And the protozoa are important because they eat bacteria and specifically they eat bacteria, and many of those bacteria that they eat are pathogens. Then you'll find nematodes, which are multi-celled worms, and then the larger worms, arthropods, which are insects, larvae, and mites also, and then larger species. So anyway, they all interact one with the other, and it's a critical part of a healthy functioning soil, which can support the plant life.
And so what does Holganix Bloom do in specific? So there are tons of awesome things that Holganix Bloom does for your flowers, but some of the top or our favorite benefits are the fact that Holganix helps with healing in, moisture retention, vigor and color, and an all-around healthier plant. And a lot of that comes back to building strong roots and balancing that soil food web. Did I get that right, Dr. Bob?
Got it, Katie. Thank you.
Awesome. So here's our second audience poll. What is the biggest flower problem you would like to solve? Let's launch this guy. So your options are disease, color, drought, transplant, or other. So it looks like, move this out of the way, 33% of you are seeing some disease problems you'd like to solve, transplant shock, or other. And so let's dive into the interview here. So, Brandon, can you tell us about Red Diamond Campus and what makes it special?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. All right, Red Diamond is a coffee and tea manufacturing company. We have been in business for 110 years, and currently we are located in Moody, Alabama. It's right outside of Birmingham. It's a 72-acre facility. And is frankly just an amazing place.
Yeah.
One of our main goals is to provide a first impression for visitors to our property that just exudes excellence.
Mm-hmm.
One of our value statements for our company is to expect perfection, and we like to show that from the second that you first walk onto the property.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, you keep going.
Yeah. And then we have won a grand award through the PGMS Green Star competition in 2012 and 15 for the best maintained commercial property in the country, which I think just goes to show that we're hitting the goals that we're trying to get.
Definitely.
One of our things we do with our flower beds is I have a really great designer here as my assistant, Jesse Mitchell, and we like to have a kind of a signature with our designs. We always like throwing shrubs and perennials into our annual beds. We treat these as annuals, and they're removed at the end of the season. Kind of hard to see it in this picture, but we actually have a lot of heuchera and actually some loropetalum that we've put into this annual bed. Just something different. We try not to have any design that would be seen around town. We order our plants directly from proven winners, and that allows us to pick from the catalog and not just pick the local stock plants that we would that you'd find at the local nursery supply house. So this is a picture of one of the open areas we have in front of the property. We're a big believer here in that everything is a program. We don't just aimlessly try things. We try to make everything connect together. And this is a good example of we have highly maintained areas, and then we also have low maintenance areas. So our low maintenance areas, we just cut them. We do not put pesticides out on those areas. We do not fertilize them or irrigate them. Whereas the other, obviously the darker green areas in here, that's our highly maintained turf. And we expect perfection out of these areas. Any weeds are too many, and we like to get that with as little pesticide use as possible. Last year, we have about 26 acres of the highly maintained turf, and we averaged less than 1 ounce of broadleaf herbicide per acre in all of those areas for the entire year, which was something I was really proud of. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've cut our fertilizer by 50%. I firmly believe that Holganix has helped us do that. We were at over 4 pounds of nitrogen in 2013, and just 2 weeks ago, we put out fertilizer at 1.91 pounds for the entire season.
Wow.
Which is I'm very impressed with, and I'm hoping to get those same results this year. Our biggest sustainability goal that we've hit over the last 4 years has been reducing our irrigation water. We have cut our irrigation by a minimum of 75%, depending on how you want to measure and what year you want to start at. This is actual flow meter data. This is not just guessing. Definitely has wetting agents. We aerify a lot, and I'm positive that Holganix has helped in that because of the reductions that we saw last year. While we do reduce our water, I'm not a firm believer of the brown is okay group. I still want green, pristine grass. In a drought situation, that's one thing, and yes, we will reduce water then even more. But I just feel we should be good stewards of what we've been given, but that doesn't mean that we need to sacrifice our results. And we're hoping to reduce our irrigation usage by about another 25% off of the numbers we're at now, and we'll just see where we can go from there.
That's awesome. And so now that we've gotten a high-level perspective of what you do and what your program looks like, what does your flower care program look like in specific?
Well, flowers are something that have always been kind of an enigma to me. I have a turfgrass background. I originally went to college for golf, wanted to do golf course maintenance, and flowers are not something that a lot of superintendents want to deal with.
Sure.
On top of that, I'm also colorblind. So, I picked a great field, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. You told me today.
But, I want good color, but that's never been a priority for me. So I'm kind of more hands-off when it comes to flowers. We don't have a very intensive program, but as you can see, we get some very good results. We do, if we start off with quality plants, you have to have good plants. And then we try to do some signature designs. Like I said, for us, that uses a lot of perennials and shrubs in our designs. On this property here, we have very small annual beds compared to very large-scale shrub plantings, and the contrast kind of forces us into doing some more unique and something to grab your eye in these small beds.
Yeah.
Our main thing lately has just been using Holganix in these beds. We probably fertilized our annual beds. We do a pre-plant fertilizer, Osmocote standard grade fertilizer. And then after that, we really try not to do much to them. Disease pressure has been huge for us in these beds, and we used to have to spray them a lot, and we're finding that we spray them a lot less now. I'd like to think Holganix has something to do with that. Other than that, it's kind of just picking the right plants and letting nature take its course, and it's really working out very nicely for us. Okay, well, so those are a couple of we have a few azalea plantings on the properties, and in contrast to the annual beds, these beds have scale. They're probably 10 rows deep, and all flowers on this property outside of our annual bed are white, just to keep with a more sophisticated look of the facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the azaleas. They just finished blooming here now, and it's always a sad day when we have to blow the blooms off. because I mean they're impressive. You can't miss them when you see this property. And this year was the best year we've ever had with azalea blooms, and I'm happy to say that last year, starting in the late spring, was the first time we started using Holganix in these beds. So you can draw your own conclusions there. Yeah, so that was a nice design that I did at my father's house. And I mean, again, you can see the growth on the perennials that we have. It's just, I mean, not normal to me. Just something definitely better than what you would normally expect.
That's awesome. So, talking about all the flowers you do, I know you mentioned before that you do a lot of change outs. How has Holganix Bloom helped with that?
Okay. So again, with our small beds that we had, we also have a kind of given a unique directive from our owner. He wants our annual beds to look grown in the first day that we plant them. Which I don't know if any of you have ever tried that. That is very hard to do.
Oh, I bet.
And if you manage to pull it off, now try maintaining it for 6 months. So what we do is we do roughly 4 to 6 change outs a year. We don't change out the whole bed. We'll change out small sections just to kind of give it a different look. And then we use, typically just a little bit of fertilizer, and then Holganix absolutely we spray Holganix on 2-week cycles on our annual beds. And what I'm finding is that the plants grow in quickly, so I don't have to place them so close together. They're a little healthier then, and we can get that unique look that constantly changes throughout the summer without sacrificing quality, on the back end of the change-up. Typically, we'll probably leave them in for, any one plant will probably stay in for about 4 months, and I'm always worried after about month 3 and 4, they start to get a little crowded. But now that I can plant them a little bit further apart, they're healthier, they bloom better, and it just is a nice seamless look all year long.
That's awesome. And you mentioned before as well that you've seen, or that disease is a bit of a problem in those beds. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So we have, you name the disease, and we have it in our annual beds. Our biggest battle has been with Phytophthora. And we're still working on that, but we've also just over the years we've had a lot of powdery mildews and just foliar diseases. We don't like spraying our main annual bed. It's right as you come into the property, and there is a security podium that you have to buzz in through, so everyone rolls their windows down. And I don't like exposing people to pesticides. We really try to use as few as possible on this property. So we used to have to spray weekly, and this past year we actually only sprayed about once a month. And I'm thinking that we could probably have backed off even more. I've just been scared to pull the trigger on that. We're probably going to try that this year. The one problem that we had with ordering our plants in is that I can't just go to the store and buy replacements. So if you lose a plant, that's a problem. But we've really been seeing less of the foliar diseases, and the Phytophthora has not hit us as bad. We've been moving away from the plants that really get it bad, but we've not lost, I don't believe we lost a single annual all year last year, which would be a first for us. So absolutely, we're seeing less diseases. Insect-wise, we had less problems with Japanese beetles last year on our shrubs. Now, I don't know yet if that's weather dependent or anything else, but we have not changed our spray program on them yet. That's something we're looking at reducing this year, is to cut back on the insecticides, and hopefully we won't see any more insects. I'm pretty confident that we're going to get some better results out of that.
Awesome. And what about your root depth?
That has definitely increased. I mentioned to Dr. Bob earlier before we started that a lot of times we change out the top few inches of our soil in our annual bed. It's mainly container mix in that one bed you're seeing most pictures of. lately, though, when I say that we're changing out the top few inches of soil, that's actually not by choice. It's because when we pull the plants out, the roots are so deep and intertwined into the dirt that the bed comes up with the plants. We had a test on some Dusty Miller this winter, and when we pulled it out of the pot that we were growing it in and extended the roots out, I mean, the roots were down almost 2 feet out of this pot. It's been amazing. The roots are just going crazy, and that's I mean, obviously that's you grow the roots, you're going to have a great plant.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you have to replace the soil because you can't shake it off the roots, you've done something right.
So what is the average size of a plant that you're transplanting into your garden?
For annuals, we use mainly quart size and 18-pack size, the typical 4-inch pot. Occasionally, we've used gallons, but that's usually only when availability.
And for the most part, these are blossoming when you set them.
Yes. You have 3 to 4 blooms per plant, nothing crazy. And I would say, we're usually probably around 8-inch spacing on our plants, and they're filled in within 2 weeks.
And so what kind of effect do you think you're having with the Holganix related to transplant shock?
Well, to me, it's the fact that the plants never slow down. When we put them in, is that they start growing from day one. Whereas we used to have to plant on 6 to 7-inch spacing, and then they would sit there for 2 weeks, and then they would start to grow in. Yeah. Now the plants just grow; they hit the ground running. We have started doing basically pre-dipping our plants into a Holganix mixture before we put them into the bed, and I'm really liking the results from that. We're definitely going to continue doing that in the future.
That's a great practice. So in addition to reducing the cost of fertilizer and herbicide on the property, I'm guessing your plant purchase dollars are down because you don't need as many plants to put in.
Absolutely. We've probably cut I haven't ran the exact numbers, but it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%.
That's remarkable.
I mean, we used to have to submit, or I still have to submit designs to be approved here for our annual bed. And I used to always put the number of plants on the design because I kept getting comments the next day that you didn't put enough plants in. And so, I'm going, look, I put 1,000 plants into this bed. That's enough. Now, though, the number's gotten small enough that I actually don't include that number because it doesn't look like a lot of plants.
Smart.
And so, what's your favorite thing about Bloom?
Well, I'm like you said, that the plants hit the ground running.
Yeah.
We've done a ton of planting at my house, and hopefully, I think my wife was trying to listen in on this. She's done most of the planting. I'll give her that credit. And I mean, they look great. At home, I mainly buy the clearance plants that you can find on the back shelf at Lowe's, and they look like they were the top shelf plants that, were full price within a week. So, I mean, they rebound, they don't get the shock, and they live. Nothing upsets me more than having to replant something that was supposed to last, and I'm just not seeing that anymore. So I'm definitely going to give Bloom some credit on that. I'm hoping to see the same in our vegetable garden this year at home as well.
Awesome. Happy to hear. And, this doesn't necessarily apply to Holganix, but how do you ensure great color? Color is really key for, some of the guys out there doing similar things to you.
Well, for me, again, without being able to really see the color later,
yeah.
I just go off of making sure we pick the right plant to start. And for us, that's been able to order, being able to order out of a catalog. We have our designs finished well in advance. We don't just go to the nursery and kind of pick stuff to put in. Everything is pre-planned. and having a quality supplier. And then with that though, with throw is making sure you don't have the transplant shock once you put it in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen many a great plant that they'll take 2 months to really get their color back, just because they didn't like being moved. And when you can put a plant in the ground and it just grows instantly, you're going to get that great color that variety that you picked out was supposed to have.
Awesome. And, in general, you have all this experience in sustainability. You speak on the topic. You're writing a book on the topic. What are your favorite sustainability practices? What are some of the key things people can go home today and put to practice?
Well, the area that we found the most success has been with irrigation. Mm-hmm. And, just for some of the people that are kind of a little on the fence on some of the sustainability things, to give you a quick background, go back 5 years, and I was a completely anti-anything sustainable person. Green was good. Organic stuff was, that's the crazy people talking. There's no way you can get good results with that. I've had a pretty quick changeover. I wish I could pinpoint the exact thing that did it. But what I've found is that if you can reduce your inputs but get the same output, that makes sense on every level. You're doing better by the environment, and obviously I want to do what I can to protect that. But I can also save money at the same time and ensure the sustainability of my department here or our profession. No one wants a bad name out there, and there are ways to get both. So, I'm the most proud of our reduction in irrigation. That actually came out of necessity here. Our irrigation system could not keep up with the demands that we were putting on it, and so we had to find ways to save water. Mm. And just this morning we were going through our irrigation system and making a few nozzle changes that probably should have been done a couple years past. Ran the numbers on it and figured out we're going to save 25,000 gallons of water this year by the changes we made.
Wow.
That's a lot of water.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It took us 45 minutes. It was water that was being wasted going into areas that it shouldn't have been going to. And, I know there's plenty more spots out there. And this is after we go through our system constantly. So there's other areas that we'll find. There's many that we've already changed. I'm very happy with their reduction in fertilizer. Our Bermuda is just starting to green up. This was the earliest green up I've ever had out here. There's a great picture that David Underwood posted on his Twitter feed that I had sent him showing our test area of using Holganix last year. The side we used Holganix on greened up a good 3 weeks earlier than the side we didn't. And I mean, that made me a believer forever after seeing that. But with the color we have mid-season color in the areas that have greened up. And the fertilizer that we put out, it's like 95% slow release. We put out roughly 0.15 pounds of quick release fertilizer out of our fertilizer application. The fertilizer is not making the grass green up. Mm-hmm. The grass is healthy. It's ready to grow. And the fact that we can do that using less than 2 pounds of nitrogen this year, I've never seen numbers like that to get Bermuda that I would call this quality. So just any place we can reduce inputs, that's just been where I'm finding most success. And I know that almost everyone can do that. A lot of times we get stuck in our ways of this is how I've done things, and I try not to do that. There we go. That's the picture of the Dusty Miller. Perfect. So that's my assistant Jesse there, and they say that is an impressive root system for a Dusty Miller. That's probably grown for 3 months.
Wow.
I said that's a healthy plant, and that was also a neglected plant. I would like to point that out. We kind of, like a lot of times the test areas, we kind of let it go, and it received no irrigation outside of rainfall. And as you can see, I mean, the control plants died. We'll throw that out too. I'm thinking lack of water definitely contributed to that. But, you have roots like that, you don't need to add a lot of water.
For sure. How long do you think those roots are? I'm trying to get.
We measure them out. We did a rough measurement,
Yeah,
but
sure.
we had them at about 2 feet.
Wow. That's huge.
So if I have those roots in my annual bed when we go to dig it up here in a few weeks, I'm going to be replacing all of the soil this year.
Awesome. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to the audience. If you guys have any questions for Brandon or for Dr. Bob and I, put them in your chat box. We want to hear, and it doesn't have to be about Holganix. Talk about the sustainability practices that Brandon's going over. Ask him what he's doing, what makes his program tick. We want to make sure that you get the value out of this webinar that you're looking for. Brandon, I think they're all scared.
That happens sometimes.
That happens sometimes. I'm going to start calling out names.
So Brandon, just to, I'm intrigued with that, the Dusty Miller. So when you set those plants, did you pre-treat the plant itself with Holganix and then just walk away and not do anything else?
That is exactly what we did. That was pre-treated, and then we did nothing else. We did not water. After about a week, we did not put any more water on it, and we forgot about it until we went to clean it up. That's
a spectacular demonstration.
Like I said, I told David asked me, he always gets on me because I don't have before and after pictures for him. And, he asked if we had a control, and like I said, the control died.
The control died.
Well, four of them died, actually.
It's a pretty good demonstration because you're never going to be able to pull out a plant that looks like it was still in the pot, because you can see that they were neglected. And then those roots just run away from it. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, like I said, I was very happy to see it, and the rest of our bed looks like that this year too. I mean, they filled in. Those were just 18-pack size Dusty Millers, and they filled in very quickly, almost too quickly. They filled in faster than anything else, and it actually made the bed look out of scale for a little while until the pansies caught up.
Hey, this question's from Luke. When you treat beds 2 times a month, do you spray on top or drench base?
Okay. We are very limited with our sprayers here. I am not allowed to have a full-size sprayer or a skid sprayer on the property.
No.
So when we treat our beds, we're just using a 25-gallon electric sprayer with a 3-gallon per minute pump on it. And typically we are spraying, what I'll do is I'll spray foliar, and then we turn the irrigation on to water it in like a drench. So we're definitely hitting everything. Our shrub beds we hit about once a month. It's our annual bed we do twice a month. We are moving this year for we do rent a sprayer when we spray the turf areas, and we put it out on the weekends. And so we are starting to hit the shrubs with the hose off of that this year, more like a traditional lawn care company would do. But we're going to do it the same way, where we mainly spray the leaves, because when you're dealing with beds this size, I don't have the time to actually do a true drench. It would take me hours. But if you get it on the leaves and then you can knock it off the leaves after with irrigation, that seemed to work very well for us.
All right, this is a long question from Luke again. Have you considered cutting plant off at base when you switch out color? The thought behind this would be to not disrupt the biology in the soil by ripping out the roots. Then when you plant it in again, you keep the hypha in place. And when the old roots die, you have pore space, kind of like no-till. That's interesting. What do you think about that, Brandon?
We've done that some. A lot of times like with our tulips, that's exactly what we do. We just cut them off at the base. A lot of times with the annuals, I'm worried about them growing back. I've definitely had some that will. And so a lot of times we just remove it because it's in single sections. So I'm not trying to go and remove one plant here and then one plant a few feet over. That's something definitely worth testing. Probably something I'll need to test at my house versus our main bed here.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. If I can leave more of the biology in, I mean, absolutely that I would feel that I would get much more out of it. So yeah, no, I think that's worth looking at. If you are able to pull that off, that makes perfect sense to me.
And just to clarify, the nature of that question, to leave the hyphae in, is so the person is recommending that you do minimum damage to the mycorrhizae that are established in your bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that makes great sense to me. It's probably need to look at that more. Because yeah, I mean, I know we definitely do remove a lot of soil when we pull these plants, and that's even trying to. I mean, we're hand picking. When we're not putting a machine in there, but when the roots are pretty much covering, I mean, it's a mat. Would be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, Luke says he's had good results with that in his veggie garden, specifically.
Okay.
So, and then John wants to know what your sorry, Luke just said yes, minimum damage to beneficials in root zone. So John wants to know at what application rates are you spraying Holganix right now? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, turf we're going at 7 ounces per 1,000. The landscape and the tree and shrub and then the bloom product, I don't have as good of rates as you'd like to think, mainly because of our application techniques. I would say we are probably over what is on the label, not by a lot, just looking at the amount we use. Trying to remember how much it was. 32 ounces per 1,000 square feet, I think, was the rate, if I'm not mistaken. You'll know better than me on that.
Yeah, but I guess a better way for you to answer the question would be how many gallons of product are you mixing in 100 gallons of spray solution or something of like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, typically, like for our main annual bed is 355 square feet, and we usually put about 32 ounces in, and then we just kind of ride around and spray it until it's empty. That's the kind of technique that we're having to use to spray, because it's not a machine that's easily calibrated. We've tried to count seconds and things like that the pump's not real consistent. So we do for the tree and shrub, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. We actually follow the we're pretty much dead on the instructions on that one now that we've started moving to a real hose and gun setup. So we're just following the label rate. We're not going over on the tree and shrub now.
Taylor wants to know what your website was again. Sustainablegrounds.net, is that correct?
Yes, sustainablegrounds.net. I probably got about 15 posts up there now. Plenty more are going to be going up soon. I mean, I'm just trying to let other people know what we're doing that's working. Definitely have some test things that are going to be set up to go on later this year, so people can kind of see what we're testing and what the results are in real time. I'm just hoping to get a few people maybe to think a little differently about the properties they maintain and save some resources while they do it.
So Brandon, I have a interesting question, interesting to me anyway. So you're in Alabama and you're competing in this national competition for grounds. I'm just curious, who are the ones that would be in the top 5 or the top 10, or what other kinds of companies are you competing against for the awards you've had?
Well, I don't actually know who else we were competing against. They don't typically let that out. I know a lot of the other winners are going to be your top colleges. I think this past year, I know Penn State won in their category. I think Vassar College also won in theirs, and they have an impressive program. If anyone can ever look into that, they are 100% organic and virtually no weeds. I was thoroughly impressed with that. I know some previous winners. Smithsonian has won. Walt Disney or Disney World that they won a few years back.
Yeah.
It's basically a who's who of grounds. If you go to PGMS.org, you can see all the past winners, and they show some pictures up there. And there's some amazing properties. I'm honored to have won once, and to win a second time. I'm kind of scared to try again in a couple years when we're allowed, because at this point there's nowhere to go but down as far as that competition goes.
Well, congratulations. That's really an accomplishment.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey, Luke just shouted this out. He's on the webinar right now, so I wanted to pull it up. These are violas at his house. Same soil, same fert, same water. Holganix used on the right side pot. That's awesome. Yeah, there you go. There's your control. If you wonder what was looking at.
Yeah. See, part of my issue with doing the control, and I'm a very science-based person. I want to see before and after. However, if the product works, why do I want other areas not to look as good?
Yeah.
I know our local Ewing manager, where we buy organics at, he did that at his house. And he needs to get his picture up there, because it looks very similar to that. You have weak plants on one side, great plants on the other side. I kind of just prefer to have great plants everywhere.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. But thanks for showing, Luke, for tweeting that out to us. All right, so at this point, we've used up all of our time. So everyone, thanks so much for coming. As you exit the webinar, please take our survey, and tomorrow we'll shoot out a follow-up email with the recorded version of the webinar so you can watch it again, forward it on to colleagues and friends. And also, we'll send out any resources and information mentioned during the webinar. If you have any additional questions, this is Dr. Bob and myself, our contact information. You're welcome to reach out at any time. We're here to help. And of course, Brandon, there's his website again, and he said you could shoot an email. Is that correct? Yes,
absolutely. Just give me a day to respond.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming. And Brandon, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm glad I get to talk to some people that are like-minded, and I hope I was able to help a couple people out. And said, feel free to email me if you have any questions about what we talked about today or anything else we do here. I try to be an open book, and find that I learn just as much as hopefully you do whenever I talk to people.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Goodbye, all.